Hello everyone, hope you all are doing well. This is your facilitator for strategic business leadership exam. We were doing the specimens, right? We were on the first specimen, which we are completely drafting by ourselves. So far we have attempted the 53 marks, right? And now we need to move on to the next parts, right? So the last question we attempted was of big data, right? The C part that we attempted, the C part that we attempted, that belongs to big data, right? Now we have the D part. Now we have the D part. And what's it? What is it? It's that you have noted from the information you have gathered, right? You have noted from the information you have gathered that DCS company has an increasing carbon footprint, which it estimates in total, right? But is failing to control adequately. Like we are DCS and we are losing our control on carbon emission. We are DCS and we are losing our control on carbon emission. As part of the consultancy report, you are considering recommending to DCS company that it commissions a specialist environment and sustainability consultancy company to assess these issues at DCS company, right? To assess these issues at DCS company. Now, draft a concise of a consultancy report. Again, we need a section of a consultancy report which constructs the case for commissioning an environmental and sustainability audit, which constructs the case for commissioning environmental and sustainability audit of DCS company, both financial and environmental perspectives. See, now we need to create a case, right? Now that creating a case is a separate art, right? And it requires your tone, right? It requires a startup you need to create. Any case you are making, right? It requires a startup you create any cases you are making, right? Commissioning an environmental sustainability audit of DCS company from both financial and environmental perspectives, suggesting ways in which the consultant might assist DCS company managers to become more sustainable for the DCS company carbon footprint and commercial acumen. Now understand the question, what it's saying, right? Now try to understand the question, what exactly it's saying. It's basically, this question is basically saying that you are going to build up a case for a DCS company that it needs consultants which gonna help them to control their environmental carbon footprint and help them to commissioning and sustainability audit, which will give them financial and environmental perspectives, right? So you are not going to create a case for the consultants to be hired at DCS and that it's going to be benefiting them, right? And such kind of creating a case requires commercial acumen. Now think of the requirements. Sometimes requirements also suggest that what skills it's going to be tested, right? They want you to commercialize the benefits of the consultants for the DCS that DCS should hire. They want you to sell the idea to the DCS board that go for the consultants as it will be environmentally and financially feasible for us, right? So now we need to do that. And now we have 7 marks, right? Now we have 7 marks, right? So any particular theory? So any particular theory to this? So I won't say that there is any theory particularly to this requirement. Yeah, there are several different parts which I want to just let you know so that you could exactly refer those parts before attempting this question. Yeah, so we covered this part also. And environmental and sustainability audit 132. So you could go on my book page number 132. You could go on my book's page number 132. See, here's environmental footprint, environmental report, environmental audit. There are several things which we can discuss if you guys want, which we can discuss, but that's not going to be helping us in drafting that much, right? Let's discuss this, right? Social and environmental footprint, right? What's social footprints? What's environmental footprint, right? First, you need to understand what does exactly the footprint means. What does exactly the footprint means, right? You need to understand this. Footprint means impact on people and society, right? Footprints mean impact on people and society, right? And then environmental footprint means impact on natural environment, right? There's some typo errors, so I hope you're going to be getting this. This is social footprint, this is environmental footprint, right? Social footprint means impact on people and society. Environmental footprint means impact on natural environment, right? People and society consist of employees, customer and suppliers, society and community, right? uh, Depletion of scarce resources. Environmental footprint means people are not depleting the scarce resources, disposals of wastage, emission, pollution, and spillage, right? Social footprint, right? What does social footprint does? It assesses the impacts of organization on its people and society. How an organization is impacting on its people and society, right? Impacts could be uh, the post such as job creation. Yeah, a social footprint of any of the entity is that it creates job, or it could be negative such as plant closure leading to unemployment, right? It covers impact on customer, supplier, society, and employees, right? uh, these are the types of social and environmental footprint. You could just look into it, right? Employee footprint means gender equality. Organization do gender equality, no discrimination, diversity, working conditions, health and safety, better pay. Customer suppliers mean ingredient used in product, right? That's your social footprint. Product safety, personal data and privacy. Fair play with supplier, fair business practices, job opportunities, CSR, right? Social report and audit. Now, what's social report? What's social audit? Social reports mean details about organization's social policies. This report includes and each of the organization gives a para, which is included in annual report. It's named as social para. And what does it do? It just tells you, includes details about organization's social policies, social objectives, actual performance, right? Actual performance against their targets, right? It also includes measures taken by the organization, right, to strict or reverse negative social impacts. Yeah, it also includes measures that have been taken by organization to reverse the negative impacts, right? As like with other audits, social audit is done to assure that information in the social para, in the social report, is true and fair, right? Additional and corporate activities over and above discussed in traditional financial statement, right? Again, the inclusion of social report, the inclusion of social report is an integrated report would be provide users greater assurance, yeah, that actions claimed by the organizations are audited. If I'm claiming that I have done some things that causes social benefit, so that means that means I am verifying each and every claim, and that's audited, right? And similarly, environmental footprint, right? It assesses the impacts on natural environment, that how much resources we have depleted, how much wastage we have disposed, right? Emissions, pollution, spillage. This is the environmental issues, right? So ideally, every organization should target to zero environmental footprint, right? Ideally, every organization should have a target to just minimize the environmental footprint by restoring the natural resources consumed and taking steps to remove emission and pollution. Taking steps to remove emission and pollution, right? To assess environmental footprint, core activities are reviewed, such as delivery, storage of raw materials, production processes, and all that. What does environmental report includes? What does environmental report includes, right? It's voluntary initiative taken by an organization publish details of its impacts natural environment, right? The report contains environmental policies and procedures, information of companies' environmental effects, informations on companies' indirect environmental effects, actual performance against to the targets, right? Consumption of scarce resources, disposal of wastages. So we will be giving each and every information that how did we perform with environment, right? That how did we perform with environment. Environmental audit, as with any other audit, the purpose of environmental audit is to assure that information given to environmental report is true and fair, right? Organization has our environment involves measurement against environmental standards. Now, these are the two standards, right? These are the two standards which are known as environmental standards, right? You just need to remember these names. You could quote these names in the writing and answer. So that would be great, right? An environmental audit has three elements: agreeing what should be measured and how, measuring and verifying actual performance, right? Measuring and verifying actual performance against agreed measures, report findings, any significant deviations. So these three elements, right? What should be measured and how, that's an environmental audit. Measuring and verifying actual performances, report findings, any significant deviations. These are the environmental uh, audit things, right? And advantages and all that you could write. An integrated report allows you to include environmental audit report, right? Greater assurance and the actions claimed by the management and true if the environmental audit is done right will be placed under natural capital headings. So see, you have got a knowledge of environmental audit, right? You have got a knowledge of environmental audit, but still in this question, there was not any kind of data. In this question, there was not any such kind of data. So what we need to do, we're gonna be drafting, and now just remember the case in the mind and the question in the mind. The question is to create a case for the consultants that DCS should hire and how they're gonna be helping DCS and how they're gonna be helping DCS. Just keep this in mind. Just keep this in mind, right? So sustainability issues, right? That could be the better heading. So if I have, now student asked that, sir, if I have made any other heading, just like if I just written environmental issues, so is there any problem with that? No problem, guys. No problem at all, right? So now we could write that environmental and sustainability issues, environmental and sustainability issues have or should have more prominence, should have more prominence at DCS, right? It have more prominence on DCS, right? Now why? When it was a private company, when it was a private company, right? It has recently been floated. It has recently been floated to the public company, right? So when it was a private company, it was not visible to general public, to general public, right? It's not that much visible to general public, right? Regarding its environmental policies. So it was not that much visible. Why? Because it was not listed, right? Because it was not listed, right? However, however, listed companies, listed companies have to take environmental has to take environmental issues in its has to take environmental issues in its policies, right? So this now it has concerns over environment, so it has to take impact, right? Because it's now a public limited company, because it's now a public limited company or listed company, right? So we just referred it that since it was a private company, that was now this is how you have to create a case, right? Now this is how what we say creating a case, right? This is what we say creating a case, right? That's creating a case. So have environmental issues and policies, right? Have environmental issues and policies. DCS would be having, see, we need a linking, we need connection with the question. Don't lose the connection with the question in any para. You should be referring the persons, you should be referring the questions, you should be referring the requirements, the name of the entity. Don't lose, write in the book, write in your book that don't lose connection with the question, right? So DCS would be having environmental as well as financial stake. DCS would be having environmental as well as financial stake, right? As carbon emission, if not controlled, as carbon emission, if not controlled, would lead to environment cost, would lead to environment cost to be beared by DCS, right? To be beared by DCS, right? Now, you have created a well case, right? You have created a well case that we need to have an efficient, we need to have an efficient environmental and sustainability team, right? We need to have an efficient environmental and sustainability team. You have made a great case, right? Now, talk about the consultancy firm. DCS could gain benefits from DCS could gain benefits from the expertise of could gain benefits from expertise of reputable reputable consultancy, right? DCS could gain benefits from the expertise of reputable consultancy firm which specializes which specializes in environment and carbon control. So now we need to consult a firm which has a specialization in controlling environmental sector, right? In controlling environmental sector. Now what they gonna do? They would analyze. Now what these firms gonna do? They would analyze DCS's value chain. They could analyze DCS's value chain, right? From its supplier, from its supplier, right? So it's gonna be uh, analyzing DCS's from its supplier, its inbound logistics, right? I mean, means the firm's gonna be analyzing your complete value chain, right? That means that its manufacturing processes towards outbound logistics. Now that means it's gonna be analyzing its complete value chain, right? They're gonna be examine. They're going to be examine each and every policy, right? Each and every policies, each and every policies, procedures, and processes of the company, and processes of the company, right? And processes of the company, right? So we just made a para after constructing a case that what these consultants gonna do, right? So we, after consulting a case, we just made a para that what these consultants gonna do. So we just made that. We just made that, which is totally fine, right? Which is totally fine, right? If you're doing that kind of a stuff, that's totally fine here. Doing this. Now, after analyzing what they are going to do, after analyzing, right, what they are going to do, after analyzing DCS's value chain and policies, they could advise these consultants using they in the first would not be appropriate, right? So these consultants could advise on carbon content, on carbon content, right? They could advise on carbon content, right? They could advise on carbon content and how to be uh, how to be more fuel efficient, and how to be more fuel efficient, right? They're gonna be telling us how to be more fuel efficient, and they could suggest valuable ideas on wastage recycling. So these consultants gonna help us this, right? These consultants are going to help us in these type of matters, right? Further, they could light up light DCS with carbon offset programs, right? Carbon offset programs, ethical sourcing, eh? Ethical sourcing, uh, and ethical sourcing and greener manufacturing, and greener manufacturing. Now, what we just did, we just applied commercial sense here. That we have a sense that what could a consultant could do at DCS, right? What could a consultant could do? We just commercialize, or we can say that we could rationalize, right? We just commercialized, or we can say that we just rationalized, right? Another financial point to be considered, right? Another financial point to be considered is carbon tax, which will add further cost, which will add further cost to its already low margins. It's already low margins, right? On data components business. So it's already a low margin business, and the carbon tax, it's going to be uh, impacting that low margin business, right? Now, these consultants could end up helping DCS. These consultants could end up helping DCS in managing carbon emission, managing carbon emission, as well as reducing tax liabilities, as well as reducing tax liabilities. So these consultants gonna help us in this, right? So is it enough for the 8 marks? So I guess it's more than enough for 8 marks, right? I guess it's more than enough for 8 marks. And that's how we just made our first requirement completed, right? And that's how we just made our first requirement completed. If there are any questions for those students who are attempting live class, can text me on Zoom chat box. Those students, those who are taking the recording, can text me on WhatsApp. My number is always with you, right? If there are any questions, text me, else we can move on to the next requirement. Yeah. Now, what was next after this shorter requirement? What was next task? So the next requirement was second, again, a section of a consultancy report, right? Again, a section of a consultancy report to identify and discuss three main risks, okay? So three main risks to be identified and discussed, right? And plotting them on the heat map, recommending strategies to manage those risks with appropriate risk management framework, right? So again, an interesting one, huh? Again, an interesting one. Then reviewing the spreadsheet one. So first, let's do part A. First, let's do part A. Now, I told you that this question is not particularly to one exhibit, right? This question is not particularly to one exhibit. It's to the complete case, that after reading the complete case, what are the risks that you just found? Now, plot those risks on the heat map and recommend appropriate strategies using an appropriate framework, using an appropriate risk management framework, right? So, sir, is there any section of risk in your booklet? So yeah, there is. There is risk, and there are some frameworks that have been uh, tested in this question. See, it is the risk management. It is the risk management, and we're going to be doing this section also. But currently, the technique which is tested here, the technique which is tested here is risk management strategy, that is TARA model. I usually say risk management strategy, that is TARA model, that's been tested here, right? So let's just discuss this. Let's just discuss this and close this, although we would be covering complete section laterly, but let's just discuss and close this so that we can attempt this requirement, right? Now, what does this TARA framework tell us, right? What does TARA framework tell us? It suggests us 4 strategies. The TARA framework suggests us 4 strategies. And what are these 4 strategies? They suggest us the 4 strategies that are transfer, avoid, reduction, and accept. These just strategies that if you face a risk, you have 4 things to do. If you face a risk, you have 4 things to do. And what are these things? And what are these things? See, they say either you will transfer that risk. If you're facing a risk, either you transfer it, either you avoid it, either you reduce it, either you accept it, right? Either you transfer it, either you avoid it, either you reduce it, either you accept it. So what's you gonna do? It's probability versus impact, right? The x-axis, it's going to be the impact. The y-axis, it's going to be the probability. The x-axis is going to be the impact, and the y-axis is going to be the probability. So now what's it's just telling you, that if there is a high probability and high risk, if there is a high probability and high risk, that means risk is high and probability is high. So what's the recommended strategy here? If there is the impact high and probability of occurring is high, that means amount is also high and probability of occurring is also high. What you're gonna be doing here, you're gonna be avoiding that risk, right? You're gonna be avoiding that risk, right? And how? Eliminating risk totally by avoiding causes which causes these activities, means you are not going to do anything which will cause this risk being arises, right? Which will cause this risk being arises. That means you are not going to do anything which gonna cause this risk arise, right? Which gonna cause this risk arise, right? Similarly, if impact of the risk is high but probability of the risk is low, that means amount of loss, impact means amount of loss is high but probability of that risk is low. So what you gonna do? You're gonna transfer that risk. You're gonna transfer that risk. Transferring means you should insure yourself. You should franchise out yourself. You should just get your risk covered, right? You should just get your risk covered. Probably get your insurance done, right? Get your risk covered or get your insurance done, right? So that's it. And similarly, if the probability is low, if the impact, is low, and probability is also low. If the impact means amount of loss is low and probability is also low, so TARA framework suggested to do accept that project. So the TARA framework suggested to do accept the project, that's accept the consequences for the small risk. Because impact is low, that means amount is low, and because probability is low, that means chances are also low. But if probability gets high whereas impact is low, If probability gets high, but impact is low, so what's that? What you need to do that? Then you're gonna be doing reduce that risk. How to reduce that risk? By implementing controls, right? How to reduce that risk? By implementing controls. So what this Tara framework of managing risk tells you, what's just Tara framework of managing risk tells you, it just tells you four strategies, four-star strategies, what you're gonna do while facing a risk. You just need to consider the impact and probability. If you're using a Tara framework, you're going to consider the impact and the probability and going to decide what to do. You're just going to consider the impact and the probability, and you're going to decide what you're gonna do. And you're going to decide what you're gonna do, right? So let's just do heat maps also. Now, heat maps is same as Tara framework, but just you need to plot the risk, right? Heat map is basically a diagrammatic presentation. Just remember it. It's a diagrammatic presentation, right, of the various risks faced by the organization. It's a diagrammatic presentation of the various risks faced by the organizations. It shows risk in one picture and helps organization in prioritizing risk, right? So this is the structure of heat map. Probability and impact, low, medium, high, low, medium, high. That's your risk heat maps. Any questions? Now, do you remember the question? You remember the question, right? See, we are doing some of the theoretical topics and I'm writing done on it, right? So that once we are revising the complete course, we should be able to know that what topics we have covered, and we would be revising the rest ones, right? We would be revising the rest ones. I just want to show you that once you have covered each and every past paper, you're going to get yourself covered with 80% of the course. So now the question is to part 1, I guess, to part A. The question is to part A, and it's of again, the format here is a section of a report. Commercial acumen you must be having. Skepticism would be appropriate skill, but they have tested commercial acumen. Then you have to plot them on heat map. That means heat map also needs to be created, right? And then appropriate strategies with model. So approx, I'll say 3 risk, right? And then mitigation strategies and their mitigation strategies using Tara model. You don't need to mention the model there. You just know a framework which is applied here. You just knew a framework which is applied here, right? So let's just do this. To part A. To part A. Risk and mitigation. Risk and mitigation strategies. Risk and mitigation strategies. Yeah. So the potential risk in which the company could face, in which the company could face whether or not to realign its business, to realign its business are as follows. To realign its business are as follows, right? So here, I below mentioned the risk, but again, what are they? strategic risk. They could be facing strategic risk, right? They could be facing environmental risk, right? And the third risk which they could be facing is financial risk also. They're losing their market, right? They're losing their market. Business risk would be also written here, right? So any three risks which you consider, any three risks which you consider that they are having an impact on, right? Any risk which you consider that they are having impact on, right? Now, heat map of the risk for the key risk. Now, student would ratherly ask that, sir, how are we going to be creating heat map on the software on which we are going to attempt the paper? How are we going to be creating the heat maps on the software on which we're going to be attempting paper? So guys, don't worry. We're not going to be making heat maps in an exam. They would be given in the exam to be created, right? So don't worry. Just like slides, they are also going to be given. Don't worry at all, right? Don't worry at all. So now the impact and probability, right? Impact and probability. So plot these risks here, right? Plot these risks here. This is, I'll say, low. This is, I'll say, medium head. This is, I'll say, high head, right? This is going to be high. This is going to be medium. And this is going to be low. Let's mark this probability here and the impact here, right? So, in my point of view, they have an high strategic risk, right? They have an high strategic risk. In my point of view, they have an high strategic risk impact wise also, because their total strategy can get outdated. So it has a high impact wise, right? High impact wise, right? And high probability wise. So in my point of view, the strategic risk would come here, right? In my point of view, the strategic risk would come here. But if any student says that, sir, I think the strategic risk not here, it should come here. So that's totally on to him. There's no worries, right? He just needs to justify his selection, right? The student just, if I am doing this and one student is doing writing strategic risk here, he just need to justify his selection. And if he justified it properly, he can easily do that, right? He can easily do that. So strategic risk here, I would keep financial risk here, right? I would keep financial risk here, that its impact's gonna be high, but probability seems low, as the numbers are not too much bad. Although they are on a declining trend in the financial capital of integrated reporting, although they are in a declining trend, but they are not that much bad, right? So probability is not that much, right? And then environmental risk, right? I'll write it here. And according to me, environmental risk is medium impact. Obviously, a normal minimal text is gonna be here, and probability is also there, right? And probability is also there. If we didn't hire the consultants, we might end up paying carbon tax, right? We might end up paying carbon tax or severe penalties also. So environmental risk here. Now, what you did, you just made risk mitigation strategies. You just made the risk. You just plotted them on a heat map. Now define them, and now define them with their strategies being suggested, right? And now define them with their strategies being suggested there, right? Strategic risk. Here it goes. Strategic risk, here it goes, right? So now, strategic risk. What are the strategic risks? The competition you are facing, the product that you have been offering, and the competitors are offering the same product, right? and the competitors are offering the same product with better margins or with better prices, so they could end up declining your market share, right? Which you already have a less market share. So brought up the strategic risk here, right? So just brought up the strategic risk here. Now, the key strategic risk, the key strategic risk which DCS, faces is increased competition, is increased competition, right? The key strategic risk you face is increased competition in data communication, in data communication components manufacturing, right? That's your prime business. That's your prime business, right? Market. Reduced margins, reduced margins, and potential decline in future. And potential decline in future, right? And potential decline in future. So it's strategic risk. It's your strategic risk, right? DCS currently have low market share. So that's also a problem. That's also a problem, right? DCS currently have lower market share, right? And have projected a decline in profits for the next 3 years. You could just look into this declining profits, right? Into the integrated reporting part. So next 3 years, which will decline value of shareholders, which will decline value of shareholders, right? So now you just explained the risks. So now you just explained the risk. Now, strategy to mitigate. What's the strategy here to mitigate? What's the strategy you're gonna be writing to mitigate? So I'll be saying that to reduce the risk, right? That to reduce the risk, DCS could realign its business, right? DCS could realign its business towards more successful markets. You could turn around your business to the successful markets, right? You could gain some market share, right? By investing in network support businesses, support businesses, though increasing R&D, fixed asset investment, fixed asset investment, and improvements in policies and improvements in policies, right? This can reduce the strategic risk. This can reduce the strategic risk. So one risk have been explained. We identified three risks and we explained three risks, right? Now I'll say financial risk. Now what's the financial risk here? What's the financial risk here? Just think of it, right? Just think of the financial risk which is here, right? Financial risk could be of a weakening currency because DCS is selling in a market whose currency is declining, right? DCS is, it was written in an exhibits that DCS is selling in a market or currently exists in a market whose currency is declining. So weakening currency, right? That means currency translation exposure, right? As money received in devaluing currency will effectively reduce the turnover collected, right? The value of money is being lost here. The value of money is being lost here, right? So the main risk, so the main risk is the devaluing currency. The main risk is the devaluing currency, right? In the main market into which DCS sells its product, into which DCS sells its products, right? Into which DCS sells its products, weakening currency, a weakening currency, right? In the economic community, in the economic community would allow customers to settle their payments. To settle their payments means that translation exposure means that translation exposure exists, right? Means that translation exposure exists, right? Eventually, the turnover after conversion, turnover after conversion would reduce, right? Now, strategy to mitigate. Strategy to mitigate. What's that? What's the strategy to mitigate here, right? The risk could be avoided by currency hedging, which you have studied, right? Currency hedging, which you guys have studied, right? So the risk could be avoided by currency hedging instruments make in place. If you can make in place these instruments, right? Other could be or by taking loan in weakening currency. So if you can take a loan in weakening currency, then also your risk gets reduced, right? Using the payments from continental customers to offset the liability, right? Using this offset liabilities of products in the same currency, right? By taking loan, you could use that by settling your liabilities, right? By settling your liabilities, right? Other financial risk, one more para, other financial risk would be breaching of covenants attached to loan, breaching of covenants attached to loans, right? So breaching of covenants could be another financial risk, right? Which you want to define, which could lead to default in payments, right? Which could lead to default in payments, right? Uh, this risk could be mitigated by paying off some debt or by raising equity finance to balance off equity finance to balance off gearing, balance of gearing, right? So financial risk also defined. What's left now? Environmental risk. What's left now? Environmental risk. So DCS is facing a risk of increased carbon footprint through its value chain, right? Increasing carbon footprint through its value chain, which could create, which could create a carbon or environmental cost, which could create environmental cost and incur a carbon tax liability, right? And incur a carbon tax liability. The risk could be offset. The risk could be offset by following carbon emission strategies, right? The risk could be offset by following carbon emission strategies. Or another idea that could be done by strategies, avoid wastage, right? Strategies to avoid wastage and minimize carbon footprints. That's the strategy to mitigate the risk. That's the strategy to mitigate the risk, right? So I hope you guys got a better idea. I hope you guys here got a better idea of the risk portion also, right? That if the risk portion is being asked, how we can tackle that. And now in this question, we also learned the heat map also, right? And now in this question, we also learned the heat map also, right? Are there any questions till now? See, I guess we have till now 2 to 3 sessions for this requirement and for this question, and still there are requirements left, right? Still there are requirements left, right? We have done with this requirement. We are done with this requirement, right? And we are done with this requirement also, right? Now, any questions till now, guys? See, now what are we left with, right? Let's look into it, that what are we exactly left with? We are left with critically evaluating the contents of the spreadsheet, right, including assumptions made by the DCS company. Then we have to prepare some key recommendations for the consultancy report using supporting evidence to advise which of the two strategies, refocus or realign, right? What to do, what to do. Now see, the part B here and 3A and 3B, leave 3A and 3B. The part B, I'm asking you guys out to draft by yourself first, right? Part 1 and part 2. That what exactly we have done the part A, right? We have done the part A. Now part B, 1 and 2 is your assignment, right? Is your assignment to at least understand what exactly the refocus strategy is, what exactly the realign strategy is. This is not to any particular topic, right? This is just your commercial sense. This is just your commercial sense. And similarly, therefore, the commercial acumen has been asked that what exactly this needs to do. That you have to evaluate the spreadsheet, right, of the DCS company board, the spreadsheet that Freddie Lithium has made. You have to challenge his assumptions, right? And then you have to give the recommendation to follow which strategy, either refocus or to realign, right? So it's around 14 marks requirement, which you guys have to do. So till the next class, try to do this. And in the next class, I'll make you solve this. I'll make you solve this part. And also will let you know about these two parts, right? So this is still a lengthy question, but what to do? We'll take time by time. I have no problem if I could expand today's class, but we don't need that, right? We just have a step-by-step approach, which you need to follow. I want you guys, now this is our 5th question you guys are attempting with me, right? This is the 5th question you guys are attempting with me. So I want you guys to develop the drafting skill. So the B part is your assignment before taking the next class. Do that, show that the answer to me, then take the next class in which I have solved this question. And after that, look for these questions, right? This requires another model to be understood, which is Menlo stakeholders mapping model. I'll let you know that, and then we'll be doing this part. And this is totally a general answer, right? So see you all in the next class. Hopefully, you're gonna be attempting this requirement and showing it to me too. Take care. This is all from my side. Take care.